Hey everyone, welcome to Out of Character. This is episode 20. It's a show where your favorite characters drop out of character for an hour, your favorite creators drop out of character for an hour to talk with game designer and host Marc Tassin, that'd be me, about their art, their process, and all the nerdy stuff that inspires them. From the secrets behind their craft to the ins and outs of the businesses, to the games, shows, and books that they can't get enough of, it's a unique and candid look at the people who create all the stuff that you and I love. As always, the comments will be open on Twitch throughout the show. So if you've got questions or anything you want to add, feel free. Can't make promises, but we'll do our best to pull those in as we're going along. All right. Well, without any more delay, let me introduce our guest for this week, Stefan Pokorny. Stefan, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. So, for folks who don't recognize your name right away, tell us a little bit about what you create.
I am the founder and creator of Dwarven Forge, and we make miniatures, terrain for Dungeons and Dragons. I founded that company 25 years ago, 1996. But I started off my life, as an artist, painter, and sculptor, and role-playing games. I love to play Dungeons and Dragons and these kinds of games as I was growing up, so that was always a hobby. And I started playing like I was like 12 years old or something, but then I learned how to sculpt and paint, and then somewhere down the line, the two worlds came together, and I sculpted some pieces for terrain, and so that's
So
how
let
I.
me, on the off chance that someone has like literally just started gaming yesterday and hasn't heard of Dwarven Forge, let me just show folks this is what we're talking about here, right? This is the
Yeah,
type of terrain that you're making, and
yeah,
it's
it's mod.
absolutely like it's the gold standard. It's like every gamer's dream to have Dwarven Forge stuff on their table, right? Because it's like, oh, it's be so fantastic. So,
Well,
how did you end up doing this? How did this come about?
oh my God. Well, because I was, I started playing when I was young, about 10 or 12. It was like the late 70s, early 80s. And I started getting, you could go to the like your local game store and buy these little miniatures, and then you could paint the little miniatures up. And so even though I did theater of the mind, which is, running games without miniatures or terrain, I did theater of the mind for a long time. I eventually started playing with a guy, James Kelleher. I answered
Mhm.
an ad at the Complete Strategist on the bulletin board, seeking
Uh-huh.
gamer mature people wanted for this game. Uh, it, it was very mysterious and very like, oh my God, will they pick me? I had to go for an you know,
Yeah,
and
the way we used to do it in the old days, where you just go around and look for a bulletin board and find a bunch of strangers whose house you'd go over to do some gaming, right?
yet there was no email, nothing like this. So we were like, oh, let's find out. And I called them up, and then I went down to the apartment. I brought all these maps that I drawn, and maybe a few of the miniatures I painted, but I wasn't heavily into miniatures yet. But
Mhm.
then when I painted with these guys, Jim was into painting the miniatures, and then I was like, "Ooh, these are cool," because I never had a dungeon master that actually painted the miniatures, and he would kept painting these miniatures, and every week we would come out with like a mind flayer or a Zorn or whatever he'd bring out, and be like, "Oh, that's cool," but we would put it on graph paper, you
Mhm.
know, grease mats, and we would draw it two-dimensionally and put a three-dimensional figure on it. And I thought, God, there isn't there anything we could use? And there wasn't. There
Yeah.
wasn't. Back in the day, there wasn't anything modular terrain wise you could use. So that's when I started thinking, what can I do about this? Well, I can sculpt. So, and then I thought, I don't want to just sculpt one dungeon because that'll be the same dungeon forever. So
Right, exactly.
how can we make it better? We should make it modular. So I decided, let me think about it. I started thinking about we should have a corner, a straight wall, a floor. I started playing with cardboard and things like that. I finally came up with this system. And so '96, well, what I did, I sold a painting. I had a painting that I sold for $10,000 because I was a pretty good painter at that time. I
Mhm.
took $10,000. and I got a partner. I was working at that time for these companies that make tchotchkes, like little lighthouses and Santa Clauses and things
Oh,
that you
right.
buy
Yeah.
the gift store. Someone has to paint a prototype before you send that to China, and they do 100,000 of them. And I answered again. I answered an ad on a bulletin board, and and they're like, "We're looking for people who can paint miniatures." I'm like, "Oh, I do that." So I went down and I got hired, and I'm painting these miniatures. I'm making pretty good money painting lighthouses and baseball stadiums. And eventually I went to my boss. I said, "Listen, I've got an idea. It's a crazy idea. I play this game, Dungeons and Dragons. I think that if me and you become partners, you have all these contacts in China. I know what to do for Dungeons and Dragons, and let's be partners." And he said yes. And so, with my 10,000 and his 10,000, we made prototypes, and we ordered like 300 boxes of the dungeon set, brought
Yeah.
them to Con in 1996 of a little 10-foot booth. And on day one, the doors opened, everyone stormed our booth, and we were sold out in 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
And that was because we had put a full page ad in the Gen Con book. So people were like, "Oh
Hmm.
my, got to get our hands on this." And we were swarmed. And then we knew we were in business. And we did something at that time was revolutionary. We asked people to give us their email addresses. So
You crazy person.
when we come out with set number 2, we'll email you. you know, and so we had a
Uh-huh.
lot of people the rest of the convention just signing this thing with their email address. and uh, and so that's how it got started 25 years
Wow.
ago.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And because there wasn't, right? There were a few AD&D sets with some cardboard terrain you could fold up, but there wasn't much out there. Some of us would try to like use railroad,
I,
miniature stuff. It was the wrong
whatever with
scale.
styrofoam,
Toilet paper tubes.
flat. Mostly was we would draw it.
It was.
Oh God, there's terrain everywhere, right? I mean, and but I was the first one, so
Yeah, well, and I mean the stuff that you do, I mean, I'm just gonna share some of it is, I will happily, hype this because it's just gorgeous stuff, right? It's exactly what we're yeah, that one is really cool, and you've really like gone way beyond. Let me pull up a couple things. I mean, you're way beyond dungeons, right? I mean, there's
Oh yeah, yeah, modular, and it's all modular. Those castles, you can lift the tops off, you can go floor to floor, and you can pull the walls right off. They're magnetic. You can look right into a floor by just pulling the wall off. It's very important because it's for gameplay. So
yeah.
everything, even though it looks really awesome for castles, it's actually made for playing the game. So
So when you sold that very first set, someone was asking on the chat, do you remember how much that first set was in 1996? Like what you guys were charging for that, your retail?
like something like $59, I think.
$59. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm
Some, I think there was a room set and a room and passages set.
hmm
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was call it Master Maze. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah, I saw some of those original boxes of with Master Maze on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're in a styrofoam box. Every piece would fit into a little styrofoam cutout because they
Uh-huh.
were resin. We used to make it in resin, and we had made a mistake. We had cast everything in white resin and then painted it. And that turned out to be a mistake because we realized that through the years, if you get a little wear and tear on the resin and the little paint chips come off, you started to get these little white specks. And we're like, oh my
Hmm.
God, it starts to look bad. And how can we remedy this? So the later sets, we cast them in solid gray.
Hmm.
Then when you paint them in the solid gray, if it chips, it looks the same color as the stone. So we stopped having that problem. Yeah.
Well, forgive me for not knowing the right terminology. My first set of Dwarven Forge was the black plastic dungeon set, right? It was like made out of some sort of a black plastic, right?
Um,
Am
that's
I
then
thinking?
later on we started doing in Dwarvenite. Dwarvenite.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
that's what my first set
red
was in Dwarvenite.
and that's a kind of a it's a sort of a PVC type contraption. You
Yeah.
know, we took basically that's the sort of substance. I know the chemical name is, but it's a sort of a almost a little rubbery. You
Yeah.
know, they bounce it off the ground and it doesn't break. So that's
Hmm.
people love that because you can just shovel it into a tub or a drawer or into their luggage and it doesn't break. So that's what they like about it.
How much do you get to actually do sculpting these days? Do you have other people who are doing
Oh
it, or are you still doing most of it?
yeah, and I have a whole team. In
Uh-huh.
the it was just me for many years. It was just me, and then somewhere when I started with the Kickstarters, then I
Hmm.
started. There was always a few artists here and there that Sandra Garrity, for
Hmm.
one, did the tiny details because she was really good at miniatures, and I was really just learning how to sculpt miniature.
Yeah.
So I could do the stones and the architecture type things, but for little tiny treasure sets and things, or the lizard men we came out with, Sandra Garrity, who was one of my heroes. I looked up to her. I collected her miniatures, and then wow, suddenly I'm hiring her. It
Oh,
was
that's
just
awesome.
a pinch yourself moment. And now I have a whole team of people. And in fact, as of just a year or two now, I don't sculpt much at all. You know, I'm semi retired. You know, it's been long. It's been like 25 years, and my eyes. I have to wear glasses,
Right.
and it's once you've done it for that many years, it get kind of, you know, I've done it. I don't want to keep
Yeah.
doing it. I keep
So
doing
how
this.
much of this is done these days? Is it all still hand sculpted, or using digital for designing these, or?
Yeah, we're still hand sculpting. They use like a monster clay.
Hmm.
Um, once we get the solid piece done, then they make a rubber mold, and then you take the piece out, and then you cast it in like a resin. That becomes the master, and then we'll hand paint that, and we'll have one that's unpainted and one that's painted. And we'll send them both to the factories in China, and then
Hmm.
there take the piece and they make another casting part. They make a steel mold because now they got to make like maybe who knows 100,000 pieces.
Yeah.
They have to make a steel mold, and these are like $10,000. They're very expensive.
Hmm.
Some they're bigger. It could be $50,000. So you better know that you're going to sell a lot of them.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly.
that's the drawback. So that's why we do Kickstarters, because we have to know that we're going to get the money to
Yeah.
pay for what could be $500,000 in metal molds or more. I think once
Yeah.
we spent $1 million just in the metal molds. So
Wow.
it's crazy.
I don't think
Like
people even realize that, right? I think that people don't understand a lot of what goes into it. Like I know about the metal molds and the cost, but most people I don't think realize that expense you have to sink in. I mean, it's one of the wonders of crowdfunding is that it used to be no one's going to loan you $1 million to make metal
that's
molds
right.
for role playing game terrain. That's not no bank is going to want to do that.
No, Kickstarter loudest because you get the money up front. That's
Yeah.
great. And be careful that you don't lose the money somewhere, because you're gonna
Yeah.
have to pay the factor, you're gonna have to pay the shippers, you're gonna have to pay for everything. So you get the Kickstarter's money and then you just sweat for like a whole year, hoping that nothing happens to the money. You put it in
Yeah.
the bank, put it in multiple banks, because you don't know. One bank could go out of business. The whole thing, there's a whole economic process surrounding it. But so it's just like it's funny. Like you could do a Kickstarter, you make like say $2 million, and most people be like popping the champagne and be, oh my god, look at this money. Like, no, you can't touch any of that money for like 2 years. you know.
Yeah.
So hopefully at the end you have some little breadcrumbs left from everything that you had to spend to get it done, and then hopefully there's no pandemic that like makes shipping costs 4 times as much.
Right? Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
you don't know how it hit. We didn't make any money on stuff that we sold to Europe on our
Hmm.
last Kickstarter because of the pandemic. We didn't make money. We probably lost a little money. That's
Yeah.
how serious it's been. But we're still in business, you
Well, and I
know.
think that's the tricky part that I think some folks don't realize is that especially when you've got like a person doing this on their own for the first time and they're trying to get all these pieces put together, when a
Yeah,
problem like that hits, sometimes they don't have the cushion. And I mean, everything's on the line for them.
and things always go. Trust me. 25 years of business now. Something I always calculate. Well, there's Plan A. It's not going to happen. Then there's Plan B, and maybe Plan C. But if Plan A happens, you're like, oh my God, it's a miracle. That went
Yeah.
too. What happened? There's always something's going to happen. So in business, you have to know that. You have to prepare for that. And fortunately, I had a very, very smart business partner that he knew these things. I wouldn't have known this. I'm just an optimistic artist, a dreamer. So that would be my recommendation. If you are a creative person, a dreamer, make sure you partner up with someone who really, really understands business. You
Yeah.
know, trust that understands business, because he breaks everything down from the beginning to break everything. Where there's this cost and this cost and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, I didn't even know about all these costs. He's like, oh yeah, and then there's taxes and there's more taxes and you don't even have
Hmm.
nothing basically. People don't have any idea how little we make. They see these $1 million Kickstarters. I think the last one was like 4 million, something like that. And we're lucky to make money if we make money, especially now that I have to pay like I don't know a dozen people and rent like I don't know 10,000 square feet of office space in Brooklyn. They're all
Yeah.
incredible, But we don't want to keep going on about the business
Nah,
side.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, what is cool is that things
Yeah.
like Dwarven Forge can grow thanks to all the stuff that we've got available to us today. The ability to ship overseas, the ability to
Oh,
do Kickstarter. It's so much fun. And that brings me to something I want to ask you. Is there like a set or maybe even just a piece that was like the one that you waited so long for and you're so happy it finally got put in one, it got in there so you could
oh.
play with it at your table?
Well, basically every time
Yeah.
I go I'm dying because it takes like a year and a half before you get the pieces. It's like such a delayed satisfaction. But
I
eventually you
think
get them, and then when you do get them, it's Christmas, right? It's always Christmas time, and let's see. But if there was a
like a
piece,
personal favorite.
I like the cavernous rivers.
Uh-huh.
We did cavernous rivers, and I like caverns. I love natural things. I love nature, and sculpting the caverns. Yeah, there you go. There were some of our caverns. That's when we did it in Dwarvenite. But
Uh-huh.
many years before that, I sculpted some pieces in resin, and they are now unavailable. They're collector's items, and sometimes
Uh-huh.
these a set will come on eBay, and a box will sell for sometimes for over $1,000, sometimes $2,000.
That's
They're
gotta be
they're
nice to see. So let
yeah.
me ask, is that character I see this character, that mini pop up all the time with the staff. Is that you? Is that your character?
They did a miniature of me. I can't see. Is there a dog there somewhere? That was me as a miniature. Yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. I wondered about it because I saw it in a number of places. So I started to wonder if that was it.
And he's wearing the chainmail, the plate armor, and us. That was a miniature of me when they did a documentary about me,
Yeah.
called The Dwarvenaut,
Hmm.
and miniature of me as the Dwarvenaut, and gave them out we went to all these film premieres in Canada and the United States, and we would hand out little miniatures. So
Uh-huh. That's awesome. Well, that
that's
must
still.
have been a bizarre. I mean, let me ask you this. You started out as a guy who just loved gaming, you love D&D, and now you're just immersed in it. It's your life. You're like doing stuff like War or Not, and you've got a company that people love, that you're going to all the cons, and you know, I,
There
I
it is.
mean,
By
yeah. So I mean,
the way, it's going to be available again at the end of this month, I believe.
okay.
On and all these platforms. It was on Netflix for like 2 or 3 years, and then
Hmm.
it ran running, and they didn't pick it up again. I don't know why.
Huh.
So I said, I'm so sad that no one can see it anymore. So I made a deal with some people, and I actually spent some money. I spent money so that it would be available on all these platforms. I'm never making the money back, but I just thought, I mean, look, it's about me, right? Well,
Well, I mean,
maybe,
there's something to be said for spending money for
maybe,
stuff that's just awesome, right?
but people like it. Inspired people,
Yeah.
I was always running into people in strange places, like even in Australia. Someone ran into me and said, "You're the Dwarvenaut." I'm like, "Wow!" You know, I invited him out with us to go to dinner.
That's awesome.
People in subways would be, "Oh, you're the Dwarvenaut." It was kind of fun. Where you have like just a little enough of a celebrity status that you thought it was cool that people recognize you.
Uh-huh.
you know. And so now it might happen again as we re-release the Dwarvenaut.
That's
You know,
awesome. Well, I mean, if folks, people can Google, in case there you go, Dwarvenaut, you can Google it to keep an eye out for it.
yeah,
And I imagine it'll be on your website and social media. So that
very
folks
good.
will find out.
Directed by Josh Bishop, produced by Nate Taylor, who's he's one of the producers, and he was still with us. He's basically running my
Oh,
office now.
cool.
Him and the team there are busy, busy, busy all the time creating things. And what I do now is I go to conventions. I'm like the traveling salesman. I
Yeah.
go. I don't even sell anything. I just go and I run games.
Hmm.
I always invited as a guest dungeon master, and then I'll go and I'll run games. So usually like once a month. The pandemic kind of put a halt to that for a while, but now it's
Yeah.
starting up. And I'm going to Gamehole Con next month. Yeah, next month.
Oh,
Game.
awesome.
I'll be
So
running games.
do you get to actually, do you play in like a home game these days? Do you have time for that? Or are you just too busy with everything else?
Not yet, but one day I'm going to get my home game back up again. I didn't have a game room because of the pandemic. Put everything on hold. I bought a house in Seattle. I moved from New York City to Seattle. I got with my new girlfriend Ann Carlton,
Mhm.
and we moved out there. And right when we got there, the pandemic hit. So we were stuck in this house, and I had all these plans for the house, and then no one would come and work. So everything was on hold. But now, as we speak, they're redoing the floors, and I have a huge, huge game room that it's so big it's not even a man cave. It's like a man cavern.
So we can show this to folks, right? I've got pictures. So I'm going to
Yep,
bring pictures
photo
up
that.
because every gamer is going to look at this and just start drooling. Just warn you, you're going to start drooling on your keyboard here.
Yep,
So
there it is. That's a photo that it's not 500 feet long. Yeah, that looks
I
better.
think it's a little better there.
It's about
Yeah.
40 by 30 feet, something like that.
Yeah.
Very nice. We just
That's
put that floor. Oh, and the fireplace. I got rid of the old fireplace they had there, and I put this one in. I basically designed it, and then I did. They asked me. They knew I was an artist. They said, "Do you want to make some stones that we could fit in as we're fitting in the stones?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I made. I don't know if you can see it. There's a fire elemental in the center. Oh, there! Look at that. Right in the
awesome.
center is a fire elemental, and then on one side there's a water elemental, and the other side there's an earth elemental. And I sculpted them, and then we fired them in a sort of bronze-looking look, and so it's a little personalized. And then they had this big beam of wood. And they're like, "Here, you can use this for the mantle." I was like, "But it looks too new. We got to beat this thing up. We got to make it look like it's an ancient piece of wood from a castle." So we started, you know, hacking at it with swords and flails and hitting it. I have a video
Literally swords and flails. Just to, in case anyone's doubting, it's literally we're using swords and flails to hack at it.
doing it. Yes, I had a looser and a flail. I broke the flail on it. I rolled a 1.
Uh-huh. So next time
I,
someone says that wouldn't really happen, you're like, no, it definitely can really happen. I've seen it.
yeah. And and the floor is drying. But when it's done, we're going to move back the furniture, which is like all basically the walls are lined with big glass curio cases,
Hmm.
curio, and that's going to be filled with my terrain, miniatures and terrain covering this whole thing. And then I have a huge dragon throne.
Uh-huh.
I hired a what do you call it? Chainsaw. Chainsaw.
Okay, yeah.
I hired a chainsaw. It's Matthew Crab from the UK. I saw him on Facebook doing all these incredible sculptures, and I contacted him and I proposed him. Listen, can you come down to America and sculpt something for me? Maybe a dragon or something. And I hired him. He came down. He flew down, and he flew down with his wife, who was he was engaged to her. They just got married, I think, and she was pregnant. And they stayed in our guest house, and for a month he was there carving. We sat together and we thought about what should we. First thing, he was going to do a dragon head, but then we got more ambitious. And as he learned more about what I do in Dungeons and Dragons, he suggested to me, he said, you should really need a game master chair. I will make a dragon chair. And so the project ballooned into a much bigger thing than I planned. Yeah, it became a lot more expensive. But he made this gigantic 9 foot tall dragon chair throne. And it's in their driveway, but it's going to come into the Great Hall facing the fireplace. And now I need to make a custom table for the middle. And then once I put all those things in there, it will be the game room that I've been dreaming of for all these years, the past 3 years. You know.
Now, is this the guy there? Is
Oh,
that?
let me see. Let me see. Yes, that is him,
Yeah.
and that is one of his pieces, Matthew Crab. Such a
Yeah.
nice guy, amazing guy. You know, and so when I'll post photos of when we actually drag this thing that probably weighs 10 tons into the and then what he did is about that size.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's not the one he did for me. That's someone
No.
else's. Yeah, but I saw that and thought, this is the guy. This is the guy.
Right? That would have sold
Yeah.
me. That's fantastic. I mean, it's just so cool that as a gamer, and I think for all the other gamers out there, I think it's a blast watching you do this stuff because anytime sort of like one of our own pulls
Yeah.
this off, it's kind of like going, yeah,
Yeah.
he did it, man. He's got the game room with the dragon throne.
I,
It's awesome.
I'm living, and I'm completely nuts. You know, this is
Uh,
what I have, what I do. It all goes back into D&D. You know, and was right now we're actually tomorrow we're going to visit another guy that's we travel to the coast of Washington. We're here on the
mhm.
Pacific, and there's a driftwood artist that's doing all kinds of crazy driftwood sculptures. And I'm going to try to get him to make me some driftwood chairs to put in front of that fireplace. So it'd be like all kind
Uh-huh.
of druid looking Viking druid sort of theme to this great hall. I like natural things. I like wood and stone, and so we're going to do it up. It's not going to be like a totally traditional, just medieval looking game room. I think I'm going to make it a little fantastical, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, so I'm not really exactly sure, but little by little, it's just my dream is coming into shape. This is like my art project now, is making my game room, my house into like the ultimate D&D. I don't know what.
So you're going to need to hire an old guy to sit in a chair in the corner by the fire, who very clearly has a quest for
I'm
for
gonna
anyone
be,
who comes over. It's going to be you.
I'm getting there, and we eventually might plan. You know how these people, they do like D&D in the castle.
Yeah, yeah.
So I now have this like chateau. We call it Chateau Pokorny,
Uh-huh.
and we might have some D&D weekends there. You
Oh,
know,
that'd be very cool. That'd be
Heck,
awesome.
damn. We have all this D&D stuff there, and I'll run games from the Dragon Throne, and I'll cook spaghetti, and you know we do. I post a lot of spaghetti pictures and videos in case you're wondering. I'm half Italian, and so I love to cook. And so we could have a gaming experience. People come down, they could play games, obviously, but then also enjoy the great hall and look at the miniatures and feast and eat and feast together and just have a D&D, an awesome time. So that's
Yeah.
my on what will happen sometime in the future, when everything's set up, you know.
That sounds fantastic. And it sounds like a great way to share it and to let other people be part of it. I think that's incredibly cool.
That's the part that I love the most. I love going to conventions, running games. There's nothing like, a lot of people, they haven't played first edition, you
Hmm.
know, and that's what I play. I never stopped playing first edition. I love first edition. So a lot of people that they come and they don't know. For them, it's almost like, even if they've played before, it's almost like
Yeah.
their first experience. And for some people, they've never played D&D at all.
Yeah.
Those are the And I just love to see the wide-eyed imagination and bewilderment in their eyes when they play D&D for the first time. It's just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I'm kids game at GameHoleCon. When the kids, they're crazy. I love games with the kids. They have no problem with imagination.
No. Yeah. And
That yeah.
over COVID, I ran a remote game for my nieces and nephews and my daughter. And oh man, did we have fun. I mean, they're so willing to do anything. They're not constrained. They don't say, well, the rules don't allow that. They're like going, no, I want to ride the dragon. Let's try
Yeah,
it. Let's see what
right.
happens.
That's right.
Ah, it's fantastic. Now,
Right.
first,
And together we're going to go to the forest and we're going to teach that evil witch a lesson. I guess. Go ahead.
all right, let's see what happens. Yes,
Yeah.
fabulous. Well, now you said you have kept playing first edition. That's where I start. AD&D first edition was where I started. It's still the one I love, although I'm the only person in my group that still loves it the way I love it. So we play a lot of other games now as well. But first edition is just such its own sort of fascinating arcane experience in a way. It's like the rules themselves lend themselves to the feeling of fantasy and wonder, I feel like.
Yeah. I think a lot of the rules weren't really pinned down that
Yeah.
good. So we had to make stuff up, or we had
Hmm.
to omit stuff. And they even said, Gary Gygax even said in the introduction in the book, he's like, listen, this is not rules. These are suggestions. You make up
Yeah.
whatever you want, you know? And I took that to heart. We made our own worlds. Everyone that played we all made our own worlds, right? And then we dropped things like, I don't know, probably like those that whole chart on weapon factors. Like, I
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
was a flail is +2 against splint mail. You have to adjust that. I don't think anyone ever used that. Speed factors, all kinds of things that we didn't use. But we were all probably also very young when it came
Yeah.
out. What I loved the most, we were young kids, and so we rolled with it. We rolled with it, and we just used the basic. No one had ever seen a game like this before. Before this,
No.
there was like Monopoly. So everyone's minds was so blown that we just winged it, and everyone loved it to death. You
Yep.
know, it was a great time. You know, and I know the people that started with fifth edition. They felt the same way in their own way. They
Yep.
they loved edition. But there are differences, and I think with first edition, there's so much left out. Like, you don't have to make the character is very quick. I think with fifth edition, it takes a long time to make the character. And at least when I made my character, it took a long time. They asked all these questions. You have to add all this history, and then who knows? You could die in the first 5 minutes.
Well, see, but
That's
that doesn't happen as
first.
much in fifth edition. That's one of the things I love about some of the older editions is I ran some for my friends who hadn't actually played them before. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of death. And they're like going, I've got 4 hit points. How am I going to
yeah,
survive? I go, I don't know. That's your problem.
you
Dude,
might not.
that's the challenge. Figure it out. That's the game, you know?
To be before everyone would get killed in whatever game you were playing. I mean, that's the mentality that I think was brought in first edition. They just
Yeah.
obviously, well, everyone might die this adventure. I mean, that's the way. Well, are you going to be the last one to die? That's the question. You
I
know?
think that that's what's so cool about it, though, is that whatever edition you're playing, like fifth edition, first edition, I've had fun playing every single version of D&D over the years. And at the end of the day, it's what you bring to the game, I think. And
Yeah.
I
It's
think that it's wonderful to see, like, my nephew's D&D club, first day of D&D club in a school where there's about 150 kids per class. Uh,
wow.
90 people showed up for D&D club on the
Oh,
first day. And I was like,
great.
"Oh, that's just fantastic." It used to be you'd have to like secretly try to find anyone else who played, and 90 kids showed up to play D&D. I mean, to me, that is amazing, amazing, amazing. And I just love that a whole new generation is finding what we grew up
Oh,
with and loved all these years.
lot of stigmas are gone, you know?
Yeah.
So now it's like a cool thing to do. Yeah.
Right. So speaking of the way that things are changing, let me ask you one thing is, did you play much, I know you've done like live shows and stuff, but have you ever played much online? Have you mostly just played in person?
Oh, because of the pandemic, we were forced to.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to do it. And I do it with Anne, my
Hmm.
girlfriend. She's It makes it great because I sit in front of the computer. I set up a huge dungeon on the table. I have a big table. I set up the dungeon and the miniatures, and then she becomes the camera girl, woman, camera
Yeah.
woman, and she's like moves all the pieces around, and since she uses her iPad and points the
Hmm.
iPad set up and then moves the. So when I talk, she's there doing the camera work so that everyone can see, and then there's a window that shows that so everyone can see what's happening, where everything is. That's how we do it. You
Yeah.
know, People want to see my miniatures, so
Well, and that's awesome. That's like the perfect hybrid for you because
yeah.
you've got
But
all of those. It would be a shame.
yeah, it takes two people. You need two people,
Yeah.
but it's great. I have a great, she's more than assistant. She's like a second dungeon master. You
Yeah.
know, she'll come up to me, and sometimes I can't really see what's going on. So come up and whisper in my ear and tell me something like, "I think that spider is going to ambush them above the door."
Co-GMing can be a lot of fun. It's something I don't think many people have
Yeah.
tried, and I've done that before. A friend and I used to run co-GM games at cons,
Yeah.
and one guy could take people aside if there's a secret thing going on, and I mean, there's so many
Oh,
cool things you can do with that.
yeah. Like also, I go to conventions a lot, and we have sometimes 10 players, and um, so I have Anne, helps them. As I'm setting things up, getting everything. She might help. Maybe they need to roll up a character, so they'll roll it
Yeah.
up first, get people ready. So she's just wonderful. It's wonderful when you have a partner like that who's into the same hobby as you, and you can work together. It's wonderful. You know.
Uh-huh. Ah, fantastic. Now, you play a lot of first edition AD&D. Do you play other games? Have you played other
I
games very much over the years, or?
I I've played fifth edition. I'm not great at it. So I think like but and this is how I realized it really doesn't matter what edition you play because I totally get by, even
Yeah.
not knowing how to play all the the higher level of character it is, the worse it is, because then I don't know I have all these special powers,
Yeah, yeah.
3 times, and I can do another thing, and I can do that as well, and I don't know, but we just do the role playing is the same, and the decision making is the same. I don't think I'll go through that door. Send Mo over there.
Right. I'll stay here and hold the goal. Don't worry. Yeah.
You can do the whole the world role playing and stuff, and then when it's time to do something, you're still rolling the 20-sided die, and the weapons are the damage is the same, and then someone will just tell me, hey, you can attack again. I'm like, yeah.
Okay, help me that.
Yeah.
Did you ever play, like, over the years, Star Frontiers or more recent games like any of the 2D20 or any of those sorts of things?
Gosh. No, I haven't played that much. I played Pathfinder.
Yeah.
uh I might have played Warhammer. um I'd like to play poker.
Yeah.
I like chess, poker, and Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, also Risk. You know, I'm a
Hmm.
little bit old school, and I'm not. Strangely enough, I'm not really. You know, gosh, I don't know if I should even admit this, but I'm not much of a gamer. You know,
Hmm.
that's what it dawned on me once. I said, you know what? All my friends, they want to play all the different games, and I really only like Dungeons and Dragons, and I really only like First Edition. And I only like it because it's my game. It's because I'm
Yeah.
making up. I'm creating. I've created a world for myself, and that's sort of like where the I get to have a control of a world, because in this world we have no control of it, and it's madness. And so
Yeah.
it's my escape from the world is to go into the world that I've created. And so the other games, it's not that I really enjoy to play all these different games and learn all these different systems.
Hmm.
I'm not that bright, you know. I'm not that
Well,
smart to learn all these different systems. It's hard enough the one system, and then I'm really just an artist.
yeah.
And I like guys because it's an artistic, creative game, and that's why I like it. But
Yeah.
otherwise,
I'm going to say that you're just let you know. If,
people,
from my definition, you're still a gamer, and if you're more of a gamer than a lot of people, quite frankly, I don't think that it's the sheer variety that makes you a gamer so much as your passion about playing any of the games in general, right? And
I,
I mean, unquestionably, you've got a passion about this.
I'm definitely very passionate about that one game. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's taken over my life, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, just a little bit, just a
just
little. Oh man. So when you're not gaming, are there like shows that you've been watching that you're really into, or are you mainly just getting out into the world and seeing stuff? Or
let's see. I like Game of Thrones,
oh
right?
yeah. Hmm.
The dragon one, House of the Dragon. We're watching.
Oh yeah.
So I like that one, and then the other one, the Lord of the Rings thing,
Rings of Power.
Ring of Power. Although that one is sort of completely made up. I think it's we don't know what to think of that yet. We're just
Well, I hate to tell you, they're all made up. I just so you know, they're all made up. They're not real. So
they're not.
let's hate to break the bad news to you.
What?
I
Say
know
this
what you
is
mean, though. Yeah.
no. There's drag.
Oh no, I wasn't supposed to say it. Oh gosh.
God. Anyway, this interview's over. They go cry. They go cry.
uh
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
I
it's
mean,
not true to what the source material. I
yeah,
don't think.
yeah. It's not.
Who knows?
I still am having a blast watching it though,
But
and
we
in some
enjoy it
ways,
here. Maybe we should. I don't know. Right now, there are a whole bunch of gasps, horrified gasps. I'm like, God, he doesn't care. I mean, I love Tolkien, but I can just read Tolkien. I can read the book. That's what he meant. He said himself, I believe, he doesn't want it to be in film, before he died or whatever.
mhm,
And I think, and we can always enjoy the way he wanted us to enjoy it is read the book. So anything that's made, put on film or whatever it is, other media, that's someone else's interpretation. That's someone else's creativity. If you really want to enjoy Tolkien the way Tolkien, 100% Tolkien, read the book.
yeah,
It's there,
exactly, and I think that's just
brilliant.
it. Is that the books
You
are
know,
there, you can read them,
no,
but you can still enjoy the
no one's
creative.
destroying. They haven't been burned. You can go and read them. They're there for you to enjoy. This is
Yeah,
something that, you know,
I think that's why I love like Rings of Power, because for me, I'm just seeing someone create a really cool creative story that I'm just
yeah.
having a lot of fun watching, right? It reminds me of game night, quite frankly. It
I
does.
like the dwarves. I love to see the dwarves, and they have a
Yeah.
lot of beautiful sets. So I'm really, my eyes are going, wow, look at that. Oh my God. The story, maybe I don't know how good it is, but I just love the visuals. So
Yeah.
that's sort of my mind is that I really I'm gaga over. Oh, look at that dwarven kingdom. Oh my God. And look at that armor and look at the dress he's wearing. I love all those details. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There's a story too. Yeah. you
Well,
know?
that's interesting because I guess it makes sense that that is where your mind would go is as a sculptor and a visual artist. I mean, it seems like your mind's going to go right there. And that's a real interesting
All the eye
thing.
candy. Love all the eye candy. So that's what I like.
That's
beautiful
awesome.
pillars and everything, all this medieval looking stuff, and it's like, wow. I don't know, but I think I'm
So,
enjoying House of the Dragon more.
okay.
Uh,
I haven't
so
started it yet,
strong
so I
women.
need to.
There's such strong women in that one. I like it, and I like Galadriel being the strong fighting woman.
Yeah.
You need strong women out there. You know.
So someone has to question on our thing before I ask you about something else. They wanted to know if there's like a set, sort of an environment that you would love to do that you haven't gotten a chance to do yet, without giving away any sort of business secrets.
Well, I actually want to do a dwarven kingdom of my own.
Hmm.
Yeah. In fact, I'm sculpting it right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I'm sculpting it. Don't even know if it's going to be ready for this upcoming Kickstarter, because we have a Kickstarter that's going to come out, and it's Cities 2, Cities Untold, we're calling it. And we're
Hmm.
building on our first city Kickstarter. So we're improving the city with more city stuff.
Hmm.
And I started sculpting some dwarven, really just specifically dwarven themed pieces, how I envision what the dwarves of my world would build like. So it's not
Yeah.
really based on Tolkien or based on Dungeons and Dragons idea of what it's my idea.
Hmm.
And I don't know if anyone will like it, but and a lot of it is influenced by like my time in Greece and Italy, and seeing
Hmm.
how Renaissance buildings and in Florence and that kind of stuff. And I just imagine dwarves loving stone and gems and minerals. And yes, I want to make something like that. But my problem is I'm such a perfectionist, and I work so slow, and then I'm terrible because I'm like, oh, I make something and I don't like it and destroy it and have to start over again. So I don't know when I'll finally get it done, but when I do, it's going to be something that I really believe in, that I really like for my own satisfaction. And I
That's
don't know how to
awesome.
make, but we'll make it, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I feel I'm semi-retired. You
Hmm.
know, I only do it. I've always only done it for my own pleasure. It's never been really a job.
Right. And I
Not
think,
a job. We have people working there. They working their asses off. And I'm. It's a whole team of people, and it's very work like. That's why
mhm.
I like. I can't deal with that. I'm a chaotic artist. And so, but they do a great job. They're all wonderful artists that I most all of them I found around and said, please come work for me.
Uh-huh.
And they're working. They're doing great work, and I support them. I'm like the cheerleader. I go to
Uh-huh.
convention, tell everyone, and take some of the pieces and run the games, and I try to give them suggestions. They don't listen to me very much, but I'd like to think maybe sometimes something they'll listen to me, but they have their own ideas and their own aesthetics and stuff. So it's really I've passed the torch in a way, you know.
Well, and that's one of the joys of working with other creative people is seeing what comes out of their minds, right? Not just seeing your ideas realized, but seeing what they bring.
I'm a fan of Dwarven Forge. The lucky thing is like when I get a discount, like I ton of stuff, and then I get obviously as my company I get a huge discount. I still have to pay something, but not
Right.
it's not. But I pay a small amount. You know.
So I have two things where, as I told you, we were going to run out of time. We're starting to run out of time here. So I have two things that I wanted to talk about still. One of them we talked about a little bit before the show started, which was the importance of getting out into the world and experiencing the environments that
Oh
we as gamers love to be part of in our imaginations, but getting out like where you're traveling right now.
yes, yes. Go to those castles in Europe. Go to see like Pompeii, the city. I've been there since I was young. I was adopted by an
Mhm.
Italian mother and a Czechoslovakian father. Right, I'm half Korean, half American. When I was adopted, when I was two and a half, by Italian and Czech European people who came to America later in life. They're from
Hmm.
Europe, and so they adopted me, and then immediately started taking me around Europe to see. In Italy, I had all the relatives, so I went to Italy, and my mother loved to travel. And my father grew up in Prague, which is a
Hmm.
magical city. It was so well preserved. The Nazis did not bomb it to bits. They gave up, right? So the Nazis came in, and that's why it's a jewel of Europe. And so I was very impressed by all these things. I went. My mother took me to Pompeii when I was a kid, and it was much more flexible when I was 3 years old. You could run anywhere, running, you know, and Greece. And I was very impacted by all that. Probably is one of the reasons I became an artist, because I saw all this artwork all over the world constantly. Every summer, I'd go to Europe and see all these museums. They were art lovers, and I would see the Caravaggios in Rome, and Rembrandts, and up in the northern parts of the world over there, and all kinds of things. And art is fulfilling. It enriches your life so much. So I beg everyone out there, go to these castles, go to see to Greece, go to Rome, go to England, see all these wonderful things in person. Don't we can see so much on TV now. There's so many television shows, and you can almost just sit on your couch and think that you've seen these places or places like it, but it's not the same. When you actually go to these places and meet the people that live there, and eat the food that they eat, and drink the beer, and smell the air, and touch the things, and get out of your safe zone, and you're perplexed by things, and make mistakes, and stumble around being a fool, and you learn things, and you grow. And it's like in Dune, when Paul Atreides, he goes from
Yeah.
one world to another world. He says the sleeper must awaken. His father tells me you need new experiences to grow, and that is true. That is what we all need. We kind of have to constantly put input into our brains and minds. The output doesn't come out as enriched unless you put in. You see things and hear things and smell things and touch things. You need input. As an artist, you need input so you can output something that's interesting.
And I think that for the folks also should realize that a lot of this is right in their own backyard. I mean, here in Michigan, where I'm at, the Detroit Institute of Arts is glorious. They've got a
Ah,
whole shrine from a castle that was taken out of the castle, the personal shrine of the noble who lived there, and they've rebuilt it there. There
wow.
is in Indianapolis, outside of Indianapolis, there's a guy who was doing before Gen Con caving trips. You'd come down a
Oh,
couple days early and you'd go into an actual cave, and it was for gamers to take them in. And you're up in where, the Olympia Forest right now? Is
oh,
that
we're in Seattle, where you live, but we drove here this weekend. Yeah,
yeah.
we're at a motel or something right now with this interview, because we just came from the. Where did we come from, babe?
We came from the Lake Quinault.
Lake Quinault.
And the forest that's
And the
in that
rain.
area.
We saw trees that were like 20, 30 feet wide, and hundreds and hundreds of feet tall. I've never seen trees like this. Like,
We saw a tree 1,000 years old.
1,000-year-old tree is the biggest, oldest tree. What kind of tree was
It was
that?
a Sitka spruce.
Sitka spruce. This I took so many
Hmm.
pictures. Makes me want to do more sculpting for wildlands. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, and I
like,
think that's the thing, is that if people can get to Europe, they should. But if they can't, just look out your door.
yeah,
There's
America,
opportunities there.
so many incredible parks, natures. We were so lucky. We're so spoiled. You know, you have to go out and hike around, and we hiked. My feet hurt. Like I went up a mountain and down a mountain. 20,000 steps, like the feet
And
hurt,
whether
but
you're
worth
an artist or a writer, you can still bring it back to your
it.
game, and your game would be that much more awesome as a result. So we're almost out of time. So the last thing we want to do is we talk about something that people should be paying attention to, that we're not sure if they know about it. So we want to put their eyes on it. And so tell me about your thing, the thing that you're telling us about.
Well, the thing that I think people need to see more of and watch is one of my best friends is Peter Atkinson, and
Mhm.
we're bar buddies. We we end up liking each other at all these conventions at the bar together. But he's doing this thing. It's a crazy, wacky thing. It's called Actoroki, and it's like karaoke, except it's actors playing D&D. Like there's people playing D&D, then the actors come in and they write a script from the game, and the actors redo the game with this new script. And it's like a kind of, and it's every week they do a new one. They do it so fast that it's really rough and wild and crazy. Like if you can imagine like a Saturday Night Live skit. And
Uh-huh.
my own sweetheart here, and Carlton is in it, and
Uh-huh.
she various characters. Who are you playing this time?
It's right now I'm playing a fierce Irish warrior named Saoirse, and we actually have the season finale coming up tomorrow. But if people can watch, each season is 6 episodes, and each episode is 3 parts. Part 1 is the RPG session. Part 2 is a table read. Previously, it was watching the filming of, but they've tightened it up. And then part 3 is the edited movie with the actors in full costume and makeup doing the script with special effects added. And it's a ton of fun. And you can catch past episodes on World of Chaldea's YouTube channel. You can check actoroki.com, and it is pretty awesome. There's a delightful cast of both RPGers and of performers, and we have a really good time. So
it's a lot of fun, and this
Awesome.
is Peter's D&D world.
And if you're a fan of Stefan, last season he was an RPGer and generated the role of the half Minotaur. You do the math.
I created a half Minotaur character, and there was a lot of poop jokes in one episode. If you can imagine. And,
well, folks will
lot-
hopefully check out Actoroki. It is super cool. It is definitely worth checking out. It's a D&D game brought to life as a full show. And in the meantime, thank you, Stefan, for talking. This has been fabulous. I had a great time talking with you, and I really appreciate you joining in.
Anytime. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you, everybody. And like we said, go out and enjoy life. Smell roses. Yeah.
Excellent.
Travel. Fly away.
Take the advice, and thank you very much. Well, folks, that's a whole nother show that we've finished off here. You spent a whole hour with us. Thank you for hanging out. We really appreciate it. I will be back next week with none other than Stephen Long, the guy who you've seen his name on pretty much every hero book that's ever been. Definitely catch up with us next week, because we'll have a great conversation to talk about superheroes and role playing and all the rest. So thanks for joining us.